Some movies try to make you laugh. These ones, they try to melt your brain. Parody films are the junk food of cinema, greasy, messy, and guaranteed to leave you wondering why you didn't just pick something healthier. But when they go too far, they stop being spoofs and start being fever dreams. So, what happens when parody pushes past clever into sheer stupidity? Buckle up because the answers are way dumber than you think. 1. Student Bodies, 1981. Imagine a horror movie where the killer isn't scary. It's your school janitor armed with paper clips and horsehead masks. That's Student Bodies, the 1981 spoof that tried to do for slashers what Airplane did for disaster films. The problem? Instead of punching up, it practically strangled itself with jokes so obvious they came with instructions. The plot, if you can call it that, follows a group of high schoolers being stalked by a mystery figure known only as the Breather. His weapon of choice? Household objects, paper clips, chalkboard erasers, and anything cheap enough for the budget. Victims gasp dramatically before collapsing like bad stage actors, while the killer wheezes into the phone like he just sprinted up 2 flights of stairs. But the real absurdity comes from the narrator, who interrupts mid-scenes to explain the body count. A literal scoreboard flashes on screen tallying how many people die and how they die. It's parody at its most self-aware, but also at its most brain-melting. You're never allowed to forget it's a spoof, because the movie won't stop reminding you. Even the jokes about horror tropes feel like they were written by someone who'd only heard about slasher films secondhand. The virginal heroine, the prank calls, the ridiculous faculty members. It's all here, only turned into exaggerated cartoon versions of themselves. The result? A movie that's less a horror parody and more a live-action Mad Magazine sketch stretched to 90 minutes. Yet somehow, that's also the charm. Student Bodies has become a cult oddity precisely because of how stupid it is. It's a time capsule of the early 80s slasher craze, where filmmakers thought horror could only be improved with fart gags and bad puns. Does it work? Not really. But if you want to see the slasher genre get roasted over the dumbest fire imaginable, this is the one. 2. Loaded Weapon 1, 1993. Before Scary Movie made dumb parody a brand, there was Loaded Weapon 1, a film that took the buddy cop genre and nuked it with cartoon logic. Released in 1993, it was billed as a send-up of Lethal Weapon. In reality, it plays like someone let Saturday morning cartoon writers loose on Hollywood action scripts. The plot is thinner than a VHS tape sleeve. Emilio Estevez plays Jack Colt, a hot-headed cop, while Samuel L. Jackson, yes, the same guy who later delivered Bible-worthy gravitas in Pulp Fiction, shows up as his by-the-book partner. Together, they battle a drug cartel that distributes narcotics disguised as Girl Scout cookies. Yes, you heard that right. Cookies? The gag wears out in 5 seconds, but the movie drags it out for 90 minutes. Still, the film's biggest trick isn't the plot, it's the relentless barrage of gags. Gunfights break into slapstick. Explosions erupt out of nowhere. And the cameos? They're stacked like a parody version of The Expendables. Charlie Sheen, Whoopi Goldberg, even Bruce Willis stroll through, each playing exaggerated versions of themselves or poking fun at their own careers. But here's the kicker. The movie doesn't just spoof Lethal Weapon. It swings wildly at every action film cliché from the late 80s and early 90s. Slow-motion dives, endless bullet casings, muscle-bound villains. Nothing is safe. At one point, Estevez takes off his shirt just so the film can make fun of his abs. And when Jackson delivers dead serious lines, the movie undercuts him with ridiculous props or background gags. Critics called it shallow, and they weren't wrong, but for parody fans, that was the point. It's a dumb funhouse mirror of action cinema at its most over-the-top. Sure, the jokes don't all land, but the energy never stops. It's like watching 2 kids smash action figures together while cracking bad jokes. And somehow, that reckless silliness becomes its own kind of charm. Loaded Weapon 1 is parody as controlled demolition. Loud, messy, and leaving nothing of the buddy cop genre standing except the punchlines. 3. Epic Movie 2007. If there's a Mount Everest of parody stupidity, Epic Movie plants its flag right at the peak. This 2007 disaster doesn't just parody films, it carpet bombs every blockbuster trend it can find, whether the jokes fit or not. The result is less epic and more like a YouTube mashup gone wrong. The setup involves four orphans who stumble into a Narnia-style wardrobe. Instead of entering a fantasy world, they walk into a pop culture landfill. One minute they're spoofing the Da Vinci Code, the next they're lampooning Pirates of the Caribbean. By the end, they've trampled through Willy Wonka, Harry Potter, X-Men, and Nacho Libre. It's not a parody, it's a checklist. What makes it so brain-numbing isn't just the scattershot jokes, it's that most of them are just references. A character shows up dressed as Captain Jack Sparrow. Ta-da, that's the joke. Someone else makes fun of Harry Potter's wand. Joke over. It's comedy by pointing at costumes and winking. And yet, there's something fascinating in how far it goes. Epic Movie is like the cinematic version of someone at a party yelling random memes until you either laugh out of pity or leave the room. It doesn't build on parody traditions like Airplane or Blazing Saddles. It simply hurls pop culture grenades at the screen and hopes something sticks. Critics eviscerated it, but here's the twist. Audiences still flock to it. Teenagers, in particular, devoured its low-hanging humor. The film made back more, then double its budget, proving that stupidity sells if you package it as parody. 4. Repossessed 1990. Imagine starring in one of the most iconic horror films of all time, and then returning years later to lampoon your own role. That's exactly what Linda Blair did in Repossessed, a 1990 spoof that gave The Exorcist the slapstick treatment nobody asked for. The plot opens years after the original possession. Blair plays Nancy, a woman once again taken over by a demon. Enter Father Mai, played by parody legend Leslie Nielsen, to save her. But instead of tension and terror, we get pratfalls, corny one-liners, and sight gags that would make Airplane blush. The brilliance, or stupidity, of Repossessed lies in how it constantly winks at the audience. Nielsen delivers exorcism lines like he's narrating a cooking show, while Blair throws herself into every gag with fearless abandon. There's even a parody of televangelism, with the exorcism broadcast live like a pay-per-view event. But the movie also leans so hard into its ridiculousness that it becomes a parody of parody itself. Demonic possession turns into a setup for slapstick stunts. Holy water gets weaponized like a squirt gun, and at one point, Nielsen literally breakdances to outwit evil. While critics groaned, fans of dumb comedy embraced it. For horror buffs, it was surreal seeing Linda Blair poke fun at the very role that made her famous. For parody lovers, it was another excuse to watch Nielsen's deadpan magic in action. Repossessed isn't scary, but it's stupid in the boldest way possible, turning one of cinema's darkest classics into a Saturday morning cartoon with priests and demons as punchlines. 5. Scary Movie 2001. The first Scary Movie was a hit. The second? It doubled down on the stupid turning haunted house tropes into a joke graveyard. Released in 2001, Scary Movie 2 drops its cast into a haunted mansion and lets chaos take the wheel. Right from the start, it sets the tone with a parody of The Exorcist, featuring James Woods in a hilariously over-the-top cameo as a priest who curses more than he prays. From there, the film dives headfirst into slapstick territory. Every haunted house cliché is dragged in and ridiculed. Creepy butlers, ghostly apparitions, possessed objects, each gets a gag, often involving bathroom humor or over-the-top physical comedy. A scene with a wheelchair chase turns into a Looney Tunes-style set piece, while a talking parrot cracks jokes filthier than the script itself. Unlike the first film, which had at least some sharp commentary on the slasher craze, Scary Movie 2 leans entirely on randomness. The humor comes fast, loud, and often makes no sense, but that's part of its weird charm. It's parody as volume, not precision. Yet, it worked. The film raked in money and cemented the franchise as the king of stupid parody in the early 2000s. Fans remember it less for cleverness and more for outrageous moments, like a Possessed basketball game that looks like an MTV sketch gone rogue. Scary Movie 2 proves that when parody runs out of ideas, it just throws a parrot, a fart joke, and a haunted wheelchair into the mix, and somehow, that's enough. 6th Date Movie 2006. If you thought parody couldn't get lazier than pointing at Harry Potter glasses, let me introduce you to Date Movie. This 2006 spoof set its sights on romantic comedies, but instead of sharp jabs, it delivered a 2-hour food fight of recycled gags. The story follows Julia Jones, played by Allison Hannigan, A woman trying to find love despite every cliché in the rom-com handbook. She goes through a Bridget Jones's Diary phase, stumbles into My Big Fat Greek Wedding, and eventually winds up in a full-blown Meet the Parents spoof. But here's the thing. Each gag is just a reference, never a joke with a punchline. A character pops up dressed like Hugh Grant, and the film pauses like it expects applause. The movie relies heavily on gross-out humor, fountains of food, ridiculous animal gags, and endless pratfalls. But what really drags it down is the sheer desperation. Parody works best when it exaggerates a genre's quirks. Date Movie just copies them and adds burps. Yet there's a weird fascination in how it stacks trope after trope. You get musical numbers, makeover montages, overbearing in-laws, and the infamous cat on the toilet scene. It's like the filmmakers rated every rom-com DVD at Blockbuster, threw the cases in a blender, and called it a script. Audiences didn't exactly embrace it, but teens bought tickets, and the film made enough money to prove there's always a market for dumb parody. 7. Meet the Spartans 2008. If Zack Snyder's 300 was a hyper-stylized action epic, Meet the Spartans was the equivalent of a middle school talent show version. Released in 2008, this parody didn't just mock 300. It went after every celebrity and pop culture reference the writers could think of, regardless of relevance. The setup is simple. King Leonidas, played by Sean Maguire, leads 13 Spartans because they couldn't afford 300 extras into battle. But instead of clashing with Persians, they clash with Britney Spears impersonators, American Idol judges, and even a Spider-Man cameo. None of it makes sense, and that's the point. It's comedy as a blender, tossing in whatever was trending that year. Every gag is loud, obvious, and repeated until exhaustion. Britney Spears shaves her head, joke. Paris Hilton shows up, joke. The Spartans do a dance-off to Beyoncé, joke. By the 50th reference, you're either laughing at the absurd commitment or questioning your life choices. Critics shredded it, calling it a nadir of parody cinema. But audiences, especially younger ones, turned it into a financial hit. Dumb? Absolutely. But it's a time capsule of 2008 culture, preserved in a film that doesn't know when to quit. Meet the Spartans is parody turned into a meme machine, where every scene is a punchline dragged out until even Leonidas would have kicked it down a pit. 8. Fatal Instinct 1993. Before parody got saturated with pop culture mashups, there was Fatal Instinct, a Carl Reiner-directed spoof of the steamy thrillers dominating early 90s cinema. Think Basic Instinct and Fatal Attraction, only with jokes that trip over themselves in trench coats. The film stars Armand Assante as Ned Ravine, a cop and defense lawyer, yes, both, who gets entangled with a femme fatale played by Sean Young, while also dealing with a dangerous mistress and a nagging wife. The plot is deliberately convoluted, cramming in every possible trope from noir and thriller films. But instead of suspense, we get pratfalls, double entendres, and more accidental injuries than a blooper reel. What makes Fatal Instinct weirdly entertaining is its total lack of shame. Asante plays it straight while chaos unfolds around him, knife-wielding lovers, over-the-top courtroom antics, and chase scenes that collapse into slapstick. Sean Young chews scenery with a level of camp that makes the parody almost feel like a live-action cartoon. It's not clever parody, it's parody by volume. The jokes come rapid-fire, and while plenty miss, the sheer audacity keeps you watching. Critics were divided, but for fans of dumb parody, this film became a cult gem precisely because of how far it was willing to go to mock Hollywood's sex and crime obsession. Mini conclusion. Fatal Instinct proves that even thrillers about betrayal and murder can be turned into a slapstick playground, where every shadow hides not danger, but another dumb gag. 9. Pterodactyl Woman from Beverly Hills, 1997. If you thought parody couldn't get stranger than Spartans doing Beyoncé routines, allow me to present Pterodactyl Woman from Beverly Hills. Released in 1997, this film takes the idea of a suburban family comedy and hurls it into prehistoric absurdity. The premise is so wild, it sounds like a fake movie trailer. A wealthy Beverly Hills housewife, played by Beverly D'Angelo, begins transforming into a screeching pterodactyl. No metaphor, no dream sequence. She literally grows claws, feathers, and a shriek that could shatter martini glasses. The movie frames this madness as satire on upper-class vanity and shallow Hollywood lifestyles, but the execution? Pure chaos. The husband tries to keep the family together while his wife dives off furniture, flapping her arms. The kids treat the transformation like a minor inconvenience. And in between all this, the film crams in absurd subplots about ancient curses and clueless neighbors who think everything is a new age spa treatment. The special effects are proudly low budget. Feathers fall off mid-scene. Claw prosthetics bend at the wrong angle. The transformation sequences look like they were borrowed from a student project about dinosaurs. And yet, that's exactly what makes it unforgettable. It's parody at its weirdest. The humor isn't just in mocking suburban life, but in pushing the entire concept so far into stupidity that you can't help but laugh. Critics didn't know what to do with it, and most audiences never saw it. But in cult circles, it's celebrated as the kind of film that dares to answer the question nobody asked. What if a PTA mom turned into a dinosaur? 10. Shriek, If You Know What I Did. Last Friday the 13th, 2000. Before Scary Movie dominated the horror spoof game, there was Shriek, If You Know What I Did. Last Friday the 13th. Released in 2000, this made-for-TV oddity tried to lampoon slashers like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. Instead, it buried itself under layers of groan-worthy gags. The film follows a group of teens stalked by a masked killer named The Killer. Yes, that's the entire joke. Every slasher cliché is shoved into the script. Creepy phone calls, clueless cops, oversexed teens played safely dumb here, and endless red herrings. But instead of building suspense, the movie grinds every trope into the ground with slapstick, bathroom humor, and jokes that feel like rejected Saturday Night Live sketches. The cast includes some familiar names like Coolio and Tiffany Amber Thiessen, which only adds to the surreal vibe. They lean hard into overacting, as if they knew the only way to survive the script was to exaggerate every line delivery. Unlike Scary Movie, which at least landed a few sharp genre critiques, Shriek aimed straight for low-hanging fruit. Killer trips on banana peels. Teens scream for so long they run out of breath. There's even a parody of TV commercials spliced in randomly. It's chaos without rhythm. Still, there's a certain charm in how relentlessly dumb it is. It's like watching a sketch troupe get lost inside a slasher marathon and refuse to stop joking. For horror fans, it's a bizarre footnote. For parody fans, it's an example of just how far stupidity can stretch before the elastic snaps. Shriek proves parody isn't always about clever takedowns. It can also be about screaming louder, tripping harder, and leaving viewers wondering why they didn't just rewatch Scream. 11th, Disaster Movie 2008. If there's a hall of fame for parody films that went too far, Disaster Movie deserves its own wing. Released in 2008, it's often called the absolute bottom of the genre, and for good reason. Unlike earlier parody hits, which focused on one genre, Disaster Movie tries to spoof everything at once. The premise is simple. A group of young adults navigate a city crumbling under meteor strikes, earthquakes, and every possible disaster cliché. But instead of sticking to that, the film drags in Iron Man, Hannah Montana, Amy Winehouse impersonators, and even Alvin and the Chipmunks. None of it fits, but that doesn't stop the writers from cramming it in. The result feels less like a movie and more like a checklist of pop culture names. The joke is always the same. Someone shows up, announces who they are, and something dumb happens. Britney Spears trips, Juno complains about pregnancy, the Chipmunks sing off-key. That's it. What makes disaster movies stand out, though, is just how joyless it feels. Earlier dumb parodies like Loaded Weapon or Repossessed at least had some fun energy. This one feels like it was made on autopilot. The gags aren't just stupid, they're exhausting. And yet, people saw it. The movie scraped together a profit, reminding Hollywood that parody could be cheap, dumb, and still make money. But in the years since, it's become infamous as the film that finally broke audiences' patience with the genre. Disaster Movie isn't just a bad parody. It's a cinematic black hole where jokes go to die and stupidity reigns supreme. 12. Robin Hood, Men in Tights, 1993. Parody master Mel Brooks is no stranger to going too far, but Robin Hood, Men in Tights may be his most gleefully stupid shot yet. Released in 1993, it takes the legend of Robin Hood and shoves it through Brooks's comedy blender, leaving behind a medieval spoof where no joke is too lowbrow. The film stars Carrie Elwes as Robin, played with a wink so exaggerated you could see it from Sherwood Forest. The basic plot loosely follows Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, but with Brooks-level insanity at every turn. Robin doesn't just fight injustice, he also sings entire musical numbers about tights, cracks meta-jokes about Kevin Costner's questionable accent, and mugs for the audience like he knows he's in a comedy sketch. The supporting cast is just as unhinged. Dave Chappelle plays Ashu, a sidekick whose every line is designed to undercut medieval seriousness with modern slang. Richard Lewis appears as a neurotic Prince John, while the Sheriff of Rottingham delivers puns so bad they circle back to genius. And let's not forget the iconic Men in Tights dance sequence, where Robin and his band of merry men turn outlaw rebellion into a Broadway-style chorus line. What makes it go too far isn't the parody itself, it's the relentlessness. Brooks fires jokes like arrows, one after another, never pausing for breath. Some hit dead center, others flop, but the sheer volume turns the movie into a chaotic comedy siege. Critics were split, but fans embraced its silliness, turning it into one of Brooks's most quoted films. To this day, you'll find people humming the Tights song or quoting, "Unlike other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent." 13th, Stan Helsing, 2009. By the late 2000s, parody cinema had already been dragged through the mud by endless pop culture spoofs. Then came Stan Helsing, the film that proved parody could not only go too far, but actually fall flat on its face. The setup tries to riff on horror icons. A video store clerk named Stan, a supposed descendant of Van Helsing, finds himself trapped in a cursed town where knockoff versions of Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Chucky, and Pinhead all roam. Sounds like dumb fun, right? Except the execution is so sloppy, it makes disaster movie look polished. The horror icons aren't scary, they're just cheap Halloween costumes. Jokes drag on for entire scenes, relying on fart gags, pratfalls, and random celebrity impressions that have nothing to do with the plot. Even the title feels like a bad pun the writers never bothered to improve. What's fascinating, though, is how it manages to embody the downfall of parody as a genre. Unlike Airplane or Blazing Saddles, which skewered genres with intelligence hidden under the silliness, Stan Helsing just throws noise at the wall. It's less a spoof and more a tired imitation of spoofs, like a cover band of a cover band. Audiences hated it, critics torched it, and yet it has a small cult following today among people who love so bad it's funny train wrecks. For those fans, it's the perfect film to watch at 2 a.m. when your brain's half asleep and stupidity feels like brilliance. So there you have it. 13 parody films that didn't just cross the line. They bulldozed it, spray painted it neon, and danced on top while throwing cream pies. From Spartans doing dance-offs to dinosaurs in Beverly Hills, these movies prove stupidity can be its own kind of spectacle. Which of these have you seen? And which do you think went too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit subscribe, and remember, sometimes dumb is unforgettable.